How a side hustle turned into a $1 million venture. Vishal had never imagined that life would feel this heavy at just 24. His days seemed longer than the hours written on the clock, and his nights stretched endlessly with the thoughts that refused to rest. He had grew up in a modest middle-class family in Jaipur, where dreams were often limited by the weight of survival. His father had worked tirelessly as a clerk in a government office, and his mother spent her days managing the household, balancing every rupee with care and sacrifice. Vishal had always seen the struggle in his eyes, the quiet worry behind their smiles, and it had planted a fire inside him. He wanted more, not just for himself, but for his family, for the life he dreamed they deserve. But wanting more is one thing, and making it real is another mountain altogether. After finishing his degree in commerce, Vishal found himself in the same trap that so many others fell into: job hunting. He sent resume after resume, walked to office with hope burning in his chest, only to be turned away. Sometimes with a polite smile, sometimes with the words that cut deeper than he cared to admit. He finally landed a small accounting job at a local firm, where the hours were long and the pay barely enough to cover his travel, meals, and little contribute to the family expense. Every month, his salary would disappear like water spilled on a dry sand, leaving him restless, questioning whether this was all life had planned for him. But Vishal was not the type to give up quietly. Every night after returning from home, he would sit in his small room with his second-hand laptop, scrolling through articles and videos about business, startup, and side hustle, and people who had dared to take risks. He read about teenagers who built apps, about men and women who turned hobbies into companies, about side hustle that grew beyond imagination. Each story would light something inside him. But the next morning, he would return to the dull monotony of office work, and spark would fade. Still, deep inside, he knew that he wanted to try. He wanted to build something of his own, no matter how small. The idea struck him one night. He was walking home from work. He stopped at a local tea stall, sipping a hot chai while watching people around him. Students sat in groups, young professionals checked their phones, and street vendors tried to sell their wares with energy that seemed endless. That night, Vishal noticed how one vendor sold customized mobile covers printed with names and photos. The vendor was surrounded by curious youngsters, bargaining, laughing buyers, and etc. Vishal's eyes stayed fixed on him. It wasn't just the cover themselves that caught his attention, but the possibility. At that moment, something inside him whispered, "This can be your start." The next day, after office hours, Vishal visited a nearby wholesale market. He walked through the crowded lines and filled with shouts of shopkeepers, the smell of food, and the endless variety of products. He found a small shop selling plain phone covers at dirt cheap prices. The shopkeeper explained that people usually bought them in bulk to customize and resell. Vishal bought a dozen pieces with little saving he had left. It was a risk, but he told himself that if he failed, at least he would learn. He went home, searched online for basic printing services, and found a small workshop willing to print names and designs at low rates. If he gave them at least 10 orders, Vishal smiled, because he had just bought 12, exactly enough to make a small experiment. For the next week, Vishal spent his nights designing simple patterns of free tools, adding motivational quotes, and trying to imagine what people would like. He was not an artist, but he believed creative could be learned. He borrowed his sister's phone to click simple pictures of the covers once they were printed and listed them on social media page he had just created. calling it Vision Prints. It sounded like more than just covers, it was sounded like a dream he wanted to manifest. Days passed, and no orders came. Vishal posted pictures, wrote caption, even asked his friends to share the page. Still nothing. His heart sank. Each night, as he refreshed the page, hoping for at least one message, one customer, one chance, but the screen remained silent, and the doubt began to creep in. Was he foolish to think he could do this? Was business only meant for those with money, contacts, and confidence? His savings were gone, his time was slipping, and yet he had nothing to show. One evening, while sitting on the terrace of his house, staring at the fading sun, Vishal's mother came and sat beside him. She didn't know how much about business, nor did she fully understand what her son was trying to do, but she noticed the worry in his eyes. She gently placed her hand on his shoulder and said, "Son, every tree starts as a seed. You can't expect it to give shade on the first day. Give your seed time. Keep watering it." Those words pierced Vishal's heart. They remind him that patience was they reminded him that patience was as important as efforts. The very next day, his patience bore the tiniest fruit. A college student messaged him asking if he could make a phone cover with her favorite quote or name on it. Vishal's hand trembled with excitement as he typed back, promising deliveries in 3 days. He rushed to the workshop, got the cover printed, and carefully packed it in a simple brown paper tied with a red ribbon his sister had given him. When he handed the cover to the girl, she smiled brightly, saying, "Wow, this is excellent. What I wanted." She paid him 200 rupees and thought it wasn't much. For Vishal, it felt like a million. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept staring at the note she had given to him, replaying her smile in his mind. It was not just about money anymore. It was the proof that someone believed in his work. Encouraged, Vishal pushed harder. He started approaching students at college, offering customized covers at affordable rates. He convinced one of his friends who was good at photography to help him to take better product pictures in exchange for free covers. Slowly, orders began trickling in. Not a flood, but enough to keep him moving. With each new order, his confidence grew, so did his determination. Yet, life, as always, had not done testing with him. Just when the things were starting to look brighter, his office work overload doubled. His boss demanded late hours, leaving him drained by the time he returned home. Some days he wondered if he should quit the hustle together. His colleagues laughed when they found out he was selling covers. "So you are a shopkeeper now?" one of them mocked. The words stung, but Vishal kept silent. Deep down, he knew they didn't see what he saw. The breaking point came one Friday night. He had promised a customer delivery of 3 covers by the next morning, but his boss forced him to stay late at the office. By the time Vishal rushed to the workshop, it was closed. He missed the deadline and the customer cancelled the order angrily. Vishal sat on his bed at that night, tears streaming down his face, questioning everything. Was he built for this? Or was he chasing an illusion that would only break him further? And then, in the middle of his his phone buzzed. It was a message from the same girl who had been a first customer. She wrote, "My friend loved the cover you made for him. Can you make 2 more for her?" Vishal stared at the message for a long time, his tears drying into determination. It was a life that was not telling him to give up. He whispered to himself, "If one person believes in me, then I can fight for this." From that moment, Vishal made a decision. He would not treat this as a hobby anymore. It was not just a side hustle, it was a seed of something bigger. He began walking up earlier, using weekends to network at colleges and small events, slowly building his brands. He didn't know how far this would grow, but he knew one thing, that he was not going to stop. But success is never a straight road. At Vishal's small business started to grow, he caught the attention of someone he trusted. Someone would later betray him in a way that he could never imagine. That betrayal would shake his faith, test his resilience, and force him to make a choice that would decide whether his dream would live or die. The months that flowed were the most intense of Vishal's life. He was balancing his jobs and his growing side hustle with barely any time left for himself. Every morning, he woke up before dawn, planned his designs, answered customer message, and scheduled deliveries before rushing to the office. During lunch breaks, while his colleagues scrolled through social media or gossiped, Vishal sat quietly in a corner, writing down ideas, researching new trends, and calculating profit. His evenings were devoted to packaging, printing, and sometimes handling delivery orders late into night. Sleep became a luxury, but his hunger to grow kept him awake. Slowly, word spread among college students and young professionals about vision prints. Customer like Vishal was willing to customize covers exactly they wanted, and he always delivered with a personal touch. Some covers had inspirational quotes, some carried personal photos, and others showcased quirky designs. People loved the affordability, and soon his small page became receiving more and more messages. Vishal could hardly believe it when he received 10 orders in a single week. It was a modest money, but for him, it was a proof that he was onto something real. With orders growing, Vishal realized he could no longer depend on a small workshop he had used earlier. Sometimes they delayed printing, sometimes they refused urgent requests. Frustrated, Vishal decided to learn printing himself. He researched for weeks, watching videos and reading articles about heat transfer machine and design software. Finally, with a saving and a small loan from his cousin, he bought a second-hand printing machine. It was risky, but he knew he had to invest if he wanted to grow. The night he set up the machine in his room, he felt like he had taken a giant step closer to independence. But the real challenge was not the machine, it was the time. He still had a job, he couldn't simply quit because his family depended on that little salary he earned. His parents didn't fully understand his hustle yet. To them, it seemed like a distraction, a risky gamble. His father once said, Vishal, focus on your job. The small businesses don't last. A stable income is better than dreams. Vishal didn't argue, but in his heart, he knew his dreams was worth fighting for. One evening, while packaging an order, Vishal's childhood friend Rohan visited him. Rohan had always been ambitious and outspoken, the kind of friend who could sell even the most ordinary idea with charm. When he saw Vishal's growing pile of orders, his eyes lit up. Brother, this is brilliant! You are sitting on a gold mine, he exclaimed. Vishal laughed it off, saying it was just a small side hustle, but Rohan wouldn't let it go. He suggested that they join hands. I will handle marketing and sales. You focus on production together. We will make this business to the next level. At first, Vishal hesitated. He valued his independence and wasn't sure if bringing in a partner was right choice. But delays were piling up. He began to feel overwhelmed. Maybe Rohan right. Maybe having someone to share the load would help. And so, with a handshake, a simple agreement, Rohan became a part of Vision Prints. The beginning was fantastic. Rohan had a natural talent of networking. He visited college, convinced small shopkeepers to keep their covers, and even managed to get bulk orders from events where covers of logos were distributed. For the first time, Vishal saw his little hustle turning into proper business, that money was better than the recognition was growing. For a while, everything seemed perfect, but perfections rarely exist. Slowly, cracks began to appear. Rohan's ambition, which had once exciting, began to feel unsettling. He started making promises to clients that Vishal couldn't always keep. Sometimes he would undercut prices just to close a deal, leaving Vishal struggling to cover cost. When Vishal expressed concern, Rohan burst it off, saying, "You think too small. Business is about risk. Trust me, I know what I am doing." The real blow came one afternoon when Vishal discovered that Rohan had been meeting suppliers behind his back. Not only that, he was secretly planning to launch a separate brand using the same idea. Without Vishal's involvement, the betrayal felt like a knife in his chest. This was not just about the business, it was about trust, friendship, and loyalty. Vishal confronted Rohan, who didn't even deny it. Instead, he smirked and said, "This is how the world works, Vishal. You can't survive if you are too emotional." That night, Vishal sat in his room, broken. He felt like everything he had worked for was slipping away. He had trusted Rohan, believed in their partnership, and now it felt like a cruel joke. For hours, he stared at the machine, the covers, the half finished work, and the half finished orders, wondering if it was all worth it. Maybe his father had been right. Maybe this was nothing more than a distraction, a dream too fragile to service in a harsh world of business. But somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "This is your dream, not his. Don't let someone else to write your story." Vishal wept his tears, clenched his fist, and made a decision. He would rebuild, he would continue alone if he had to. He would not let betrayal define his journey. The next few weeks were betrayal. Many clients who had came through Rohan now sided him. Orders dropped and Vishal's income shrank drastically. He spent sleepless nights figuring out how to survive, but instead of quitting, he went back to the basics. He started reaching out directly to the old consumers, offering discount at personal service. He shared his story openly on the page, telling people how Vision Prints was his personal dream. To his surprise, customers began supporting him. They appreciated his honesty and slowly orders started returning. During this difficult phase, another unexpected opportunity knocked on his door. A local cafe owner approached him, asking if he could design quirky covers with coffee-related quotes and to sell at their counter. It was a small order, but it opened a new idea in Vishal's mind: collaborations. Instead of relying on individual customers, he could partner with small businesses, cafes, shops, and events to create customer covers in bulk. Excited, Vishal began pitching his idea everywhere he could. Most people rejected him, some laughed, but a few said yes. With those yes responses, Vishal started building again. Bulk orders became his survival strategy, giving more stability than scattered individual scale. But success never comes without new struggle. As his business started picking up again, his job became unbearable. His boss noticed his distraction and warned that his side activities were affecting his performance. The pressure became so intense that Vishal had to make the toughest decision of his life: whether to keep a secure job or to take the terrifying leap of focusing fully on his business. The night before his decision, Vishal lay awake thinking of his parents. They had always wanted him to have stability, not risk. If he quit his job and failed, he would not only disappoint himself but also disappoint his family. Yet, if he stayed, he would be killing his own dreams slowly. At night, he finally chose he would resign, telling his father that it was the hardest part. His father's face fell when he heard the news. "You are throwing away security for a gamble," he said, shaking his head. His mother, though worried, quietly supported him, reminding his father that sometimes faith was important than fear. With trembling hands but a determined heart, Vishal submitted his resignation. Walking out of the office for the last time, he felt both terrified and liberated. He had no safety net, no steady income, only his side hustle and unshakable belief that could grow. The next months were a storm. Bills piled up, customers were demanding, and competition were very much high. Some nights Vishal thought he had made a terrible mistake, but each morning he forced himself to get up and fight again. He expanded his designs, experimented with new products like customized mug and t-shirts, and kept knocking on doors for opportunities. Slowly, he began craving a space for himself in the market. Then came the turning point. A well-known event company was organizing a youth festival and needed a 500 customized covers as giveaways. Vishal almost fainted at the scale of the order. It was bigger than anything he had ever handled. He stayed up for days, working tirelessly to print, package, and deliver. When the event ended, photos of the covers went viral on social media, and suddenly Vision Prints became a name people recognized. Orders poured in, messages flooded in his inbox, and for the first time, Vishal felt like he was truly on a path he had always dreamed of. But just as the light was beginning to shine brighter, another twist awaited him. Something far bigger than Rohan's betrayal, a challenge that would test not his business skills but his courage, resilience, and belief in himself. That challenge would decide whether Vision Prints would remain just a small hustle or rise into the $1 million venture. The youth festival had changed everything. For the first time, Vishal's brand, Vision Prints, has been spoken about beyond his small circles of customers. Photos of his covers, bright and unique, spread across Instagram and Facebook. Students tagged his page, influencer casually showed them off, and suddenly in his inbox was flooded with inquiries. Vishal could hardly believe his eyes as a notification kept pouring in. Bulk orders, collaborations, personalized requests from people he had never met. For a boy who had once struggled to get even a single order, it felt like he was living in his dream. But success, he quickly learned, was not just a blessing, it came through own set of challenges that would push him into the darkest period of his life. The first storm arrived in the form of competition. Until now, Vishal had begun a unique in the small city market. But as soon as others noticed his growing brand, copycats emerged. Shops started selling cheap, customized covers. Some even used his photos, stealing his designs and offering them at lower prices. Customers tempted by cheaper deals began shifting away. Vishal felt helpless, realizing that business is good ideas, but they also to be imitated. To fight back, he tried to innovate. He had more products, custom mugs, t-shirts and keychain, but expanding meant more investment, and without enough saving, he would not borrow money more. He convinced himself it was a temporary risk, that the orders would cover the expenses soon, but soon delays started haunting him. The new supplier of t-shirt delivers late, the printing machine broke down twice, and Vishal missed deadlines for important clients. Angry message filled in his inbox, and some even posted negative reviews online. It was like watching the castle he built and with so much hard work was was down in his eyes. The financial pressure grew unbearable. He had borrowed from friends, cousins, and even to take a small loan from the bank. Every day, bills piled up, but the income was inconsistent. Some months brought a flood of orders, others brought silence. He often sat at his desk late into night, staring at the unpaid invoices, his chest heavily with fear. He had given up a stable job for this. What if his father had been right all along? The emotional toll was crushing him. Vishal had no time for friends, barely spoke to the family, and lived at the constant stress. He avoided meeting people because he didn't want to answer questions about how big business was going. His health began to decline, he skipped meals, lost weight, and dark circles under his eyes deepened. His mother begged him to slow down, but he always replied with the One evening, Vishal received the biggest order of his career, 1200 customized cover for a corporate event. It was worth more than months of income and could clear his debt. He hired workers, borrowed money, and turned his house into a factory. But just 2 days before delivery, his main machine broke down. Desperate, he outsourced part of the work only to get defective pieces. On delivery day, the client rejected the order, refused payment, and left him humiliated. That night, Vishal sat in the darkness, broken. All the borrowed money, sleepless night, and dreams had collapsed. Days turned into weeks of despair. Orders stopped, followers vanished, and his father's silence cut deeper than words. He almost gave up, whispering, "Maybe I am not meant for the business." Then, by chance, he read a story online. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's the part of it. Those words reignited him. He listed his mistakes and realized he had gone too fast, borrowed too much, and lacked focus. If he wanted to rise again, he had to rebuild smarter. He faced his creditors honestly, sold extra machines to pay debt, and narrowed his focus back to cover the product he knew best. This time, he gave them meaning, launching collections with themes like travel, dreams, and motivation. Customers connected to the story, not just the products. Slowly, orders returned stronger than before. Determined to grow, Vishal learned digital marketing and began targeting buyers across India. Came from big clients like Vision Prints was no longer just an hustle, it was becoming a brand with identity and purpose. Yet Vishal knew this was only the beginning. To truly make Vision Prints $1 million company or a venture, he would need to face his biggest test yet, scaling beyond its limits into the world of investor, partnership, and fierce competition. Vishal sat alone in his office late at night, staring at the glowing city lights. His small side hustle had grown into a real company. Dozens of employees, steady customers, even recognition from local newspapers. Yet, deep down, he knew this was only half of the journey. He didn't want to survive, he wanted to build a brand that would last for generations. Pressure and setbacks. With growth come pressure. Orders were increasing, investors were circling, and competitors were copying his product. Scaling too fast could break him, scaling too slow could make him irrelevant. Then came his biggest setback. A large shipment worth lakhs was delayed and damaged. The buyer cancelled, and Vishal bore the entire loss. For the first time in months, he felt broken. Bills piled up, investor grew angry, and debt whispered, "Maybe you should quit." One night, sitting on his balcony under the stars, Vishal remembered his early struggle, his first customer, his parents, tears of pride. He realized his business wasn't just about the money, it was about the impact. He decided to fight back. He rebranded it with a bold mission: sustainable living for every family. No longer just eco friendly products, he built an entire ecosystem for affordable, stylish, and sustainable solutions. He shared his story openly online, and people began to connecting to his vision. Customers weren't just buying products, they were supporting dream. At trade fair, an international return chain discovered him. Weeks later, Vishal signed the biggest deal of his life. His products would now sold across multiple countries. From a local businessman, he had stepped onto the global stage. The growth was surreal. His team expanded, his parent introduced him proudly as an entrepreneur, and his criticism now sought his advice. But Vishal never fought or never forgot that nights of hunger, rejection, and failure. Every time he walked his factory floor, he whispered, "This was just a dream, and now it's real." Years of persistence paid off. One day, his accountant looked up and said, "Sir, this quarter we crossed $1 million in revenue." Vishal sat in silence, tears in his eyes. From a tiny side hustle, born out of the desperation, and to make $1 million venture, he made it. The legacy. Years later, Vishal Company became a global symbol of sustainable entrepreneurship. Students studied in his journey, young founders looked up to him, and whenever people asked for his secret, he always smiled and said, "I started with nothing, I failed many times, but I kept going. That's his only the secret." And so, the side hustle that once seemed like survival had turned into $1 million legacy, an inspiration for generations.